Today we're gonna talk about drawing a skull, a human skull to be exact. And I'm gonna show you how to do it kind of quickly in front and in profile. And some things you may have to think about when you're drawing your character, or if you want a skull on your character that maybe has a more specific style that isn't more, the realistic one. So let's do it from the front to start with. Now, you remember how I told you how to do heads? So we are gonna do a circle. We're gonna go with some lines going down like this, and voila, we have the basic shape of a head. Now, of course, this is not looking like a skull at all, but it's a good way to, get the outer perimeter of the skull, so to speak. So we know that the skull is not gonna go and pop out. For instance, why I do this is because it's also easier to see where the jawline and how big the head would be and such like that, instead of going and trying to do the skull directly, so to speak. So let's see here. We're gonna go and we're gonna do the eyes. So the eyes would be somewhere around here, and now you can do a very big eyes because they are eye sockets. These are not the eyes that you see in a final drawing, because now we don't have the pupil or the eyeball. We only have the eye socket. And as you can see, I'm still keeping it very loose because I don't want to do anything detailed just yet. So the nose, well, the nose is not gonna be there. It's gonna be a big kind of hole. It's gonna be a kind of almost Star Trek kind of sign here. That's where the nose is gonna be. So I usually think about doing the nose, the hole that it is. Imagine the bottom of it to be where the nose kind of ends before it goes to the mouth. As you can see right now, we already have some issues because we pushed it a little bit too much down. So I'm just gonna shove it up a little bit, just a little bit, so we get some space for the mouth. The mouth is gonna be the thing that's gonna change everything, that's gonna make it look like a skull, because right now it doesn't look like a skull. But we're gonna go like this. As you can see, I'm going in like this, so I'm following the eye socket's shape, you could say, and going in like this. But then from that you're gonna go out to get to the mouth, the teeth, the upper row of teeth, and this is up to debate on how you want to draw the teeth. I usually just do a pattern like this. Sometimes I make the teeth a little bit bigger depending on the style I'm using for the purpose and such. But as you can see, now we're getting into the skull part, and we can start to erase a little bit like this. Now I'm doing this, bit by bit, and you will see that I'm gonna go in and change with the details later on. But we also have to have the bottom row, so let's just follow the shape of this and we get the bottom row like this. As you can see, it doesn't take much, simple shapes, and then you put it together and it looks great. Now for the jaw. As you can see, we're getting a very close jaw here, but I'm gonna push like this, because here is the thing that I see most people do a little bit wrong. They don't do the whole shape of the skull, or the head I should say, and they just try to do, the top first and then the jaw, and it looks kind of not put together well. So that's one thing to think about. And then you have the piece here that goes like this, and I want to push the jaw a little bit more down because I feel like we should have a little bit more distinctive jaw, and then you get something like this. And that's pretty much it for the skull. Of course, there are details that you can see here. Actually, there is a bone. The eye socket goes kind of out and actually goes like this. That's why we get sometimes a different shape on the top. But as you can see, it's starting to become the skull we are used to seeing when it's done. But you know, like I said, try to do simple shapes first and then you build out. Also try to remember that the skull is actually a little bit bigger. It looks not perfectly round, so it's okay to have some faults. Make it a little bit more random so it doesn't look perfect, because no skull really is perfect. I usually have some dents and stuff like that. And then of course we can emphasize the skull, which you can see here it goes with a bit lines to the teeth. You can do some more heavy lines on the end of each teeth row, because then you get it looks like it pops out a little bit more. And then of course, if you want it to make it look a little bit more evil, we can bend a little bit of the eye sockets to shape them so it looks more menacing. And then of course we can do lines to show that, oh yeah, of course it's a hole, so we can fill it with a little bit of darkness here, but we could also, you know, make it look a little bit more menacing than it really is. Because if you look at a human skull, it usually doesn't look that scary or menacing. It actually looks pretty much just like a skull. So the emphasis on the evil part is something that you will have to emphasize and make look. So you can push the lines to make it a little bit more evil. And then of course we can put some lines here, some shadows underneath the eyes, just to make it a little bit more, you know, eccentric, a little bit more scary and stuff like that. And you can also, depending on if it's more than a human skull, you can put some more details, or, you know, stuff that changes the shape to make it look a little bit more alien, or, you know, frightening, so to speak. But that's pretty much how I draw a skull. So let's push it up a little bit more so you can see a little bit more of the details, like such. And let's put some sharp on it. There we go. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's put some darkness into the eyes so we get the real feel here. There we go. So let's do a skull from the profile kind of view, which is pretty much the same thing. So we're just gonna do the top of the head like a circle. And you remember how I did profile, so you have the ear somewhere around here, and then you have the, so let's make it after the skull we see on the side here. So let's push it a little bit more. So here we go, we're gonna push the skull like this. As you can see, I'm doing the shape, and remember, the skull is actually going back quite a bit like this. So in the end we're gonna get something like this. And I'm gonna actually remove the ear, because that's just if the head has some skin and muscles and everything like that. So we get kind of like this shape. Now let's put the eye sockets. As you can see, I'm following the measurements so you can see what I'm thinking or what I'm doing. And for this, I'm doing the eye socket. I'm gonna go and do actually a more bend like this, because, you know, a socket will not go out. Only if it has an eye it will go out. But also remember, here you go, here's gonna be kind of the eyebrows kind of thing that pops out, and then you have where the nose goes out like such. But it's not gonna go very much out, because like I said, the nose doesn't exist here. It's actually just a hole. But it does pop out a little bit, because if you feel on your nose, you can feel that there is some bone inside of the nose, but it doesn't pop out like a real nose when the muscles and flesh is there. And then of course it's gonna go out to the teeth like such. And I'm gonna go and take a soft brush just to erase a little bit so you can still see where we at. And then of course we're gonna have the teeth, but we're gonna have half the row because we are watching it in a profile. So here you can see the teeth is coming. I usually try to do a small tooth at the end of the row. And then of course we're gonna do the bottom row. And you can see once again I'm not doing not much in shapes. It's just simple like this, and then you get some teeth up in there. And then of course the jaw comes, and then we're gonna get like this. It works fine by me, yes. And there you go. There you have pretty much the beginning of the skull here. And I'm gonna change a little bit parts here and there because I can see there's some mistakes here and there. Once again, you can try and do some lines here just to emphasize that the skeleton has bone and stuff such like that. Now here comes the part where many people get it wrong. Now this is following how an actual human skull is. Some people don't do this, some people make it more cartoony, which is fine. Depends on what you're doing, what project you're working on, and what the style of that project is. So remember that, it doesn't have to be, you know, perfect. But here is this part. This part right here is actually kind of going like this, and it goes into the skull on the side here. And then you have the this part right here is actually going like this, which is showing how it connects like this to the, and actually there's actually a kind of hole here, or at least it's going in inwards, but it's not actually a hole, but it's kind of like it's going inside there. So that's something to think about when doing it. And then you have the upper jaw, which is going, and I've pushed, my version of this now is very pushed in. So actually this, if we're gonna do it correctly, it should be a little bit more pushed up like this perhaps, just to get it right. Because once again, I'm not drawing exactly how it is in real life. I do my own versions of stuff. So, and then you have this piece, which actually goes something like this. It goes up here and then goes down to this. So it's actually like that. And then you have that part like this. So you can see it gets kind of complicated, and I guess that's why many artists kind of do a different version, because it doesn't make sense is not the right word, but it doesn't look perhaps as cool as some other designs that I've seen. So I guess why they do it is that. And then you have the end of the skull, and of course remember the skull usually has a lot of texture and dents and stuff like that, but usually that is pretty much what a skull from front and profile looks like. Now this is based on a real skull, and it's based on how it looks for a human underneath all of this. And like I said, you can go and work on the details and, you know, put more details in, you know, some lines here and there. It will help the image to look more real. If you want it to look old, try to do like lines like this to make it look like it's perhaps falling apart, or it has been, you know, hiding or lying in dust or anything like that for a long time. But this is pretty much what a skull looks like. But of course you can, you don't have to do the thing where you have to do all of this. It usually works as well if you kind of do like this. If you're gonna do a more cartoony, more comic, more not comic, but kind of web comic, or, you know, humor kind of way, because there's so many ways you can draw a skull, as long as you know pretty much the inner workings, and then you can go and do your own version of it. Because of course, if you're gonna do it more cute, where you don't want the skull to be perhaps frightening or scary, then you can do it the cute way and stuff like that. So you can of course do it like this, and you know, other versions of it. What I usually have to remind people though is, for instance, let's say we do a character here. We're gonna do, boom, a very quick character design here. So here we have the ears. Perhaps he has a kind of spiky here, spiky hair. So let's go and do it like this, just to get, you know, a character in here. Now, why am I doing a character? It's about skulls. Well, let's say you get a good style going and you really like your style, but in one, perhaps one page, he's supposed to have, you know, his skull version, or his, you know, you're going to show an X-ray of his skull or something like that. And then you don't know, oh, but I have a style that isn't, you know, based on reality. How do I translate that? Or do I just go with a real skull and try to make it work? What I usually say is this. A very simple character here. But what I would do is this. I would take, just to make it bigger so everyone can see, I would take the character like this, and let's make a copy of that and paste it back in. Then we're gonna move it to over here. And for this, I'm gonna lower it. So now I can see kind of like, okay, here's the, let's see, we're gonna push it so we get exactly in line. There we go. So I'm gonna do a new layer on top of this, because now I can see where the skeleton parts or the skull parts is supposed to be. So I can see already here where it's supposed to be, because I know the important parts of the skull. So I can go like this, and I can, you know, of course you can play a little bit with it, as long as you don't have where it's supposed to show everything and nothing at the same time. But so let's go here and then go teeth, and then I know, okay, so the teeth is gonna be there, and then the jaw is gonna be like this, because that's the limit I have set for myself. And then you can see already how the skull is looking underneath, and we get our skull based on our style. So as you can see, we get something that works. And once again, if you don't feel it, if it really is important, like if you're gonna do a Ghost Rider kind of style comic where it's showing the skull a lot and it's based on a style, always remember, try to make it so it works both ways. So for instance, if I take it there you have it. Now this is the character, and then you have the skull on this character based on the style of that. So you get this. So it's the same person, but this is his skull, and this is when he has flesh and, you know, nose and everything like that. So that's what I would say about skulls. Try to look at pictures. Always remember, reference is a good way to do it, but the most important parts are usually the eyes, the nose, the teeth, and the jawline. And of course, remember the hole in the jaw here, which is this part. This part isn't really actually shown, so I would concentrate on this part. And of course, remember that the skull is actually going back a lot, because that's how they have, because then you have the skin that comes, and then you don't see because you have the muscles and everything, and here it comes the rest of the skeleton like that. So that's why you get more empty area, so to speak. So that's it for me today. I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next tutorial video. Bye!